Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Asmadacharya Pariyandam Vande Guru Paramparam Om. Okay. So, does anyone brought a question? Hello, Lynn. Hello, Ruth. Does any one of you have a question today? Or we go, Claudio, you are the guy.
Yeah.
You are the guy.
We talked the last time about the objectifying consciousness, because I had a doubt about this. Because, you know, when I do meditation, I can see, of course, my feelings, I can see emotion, thoughts, so a lot of things. And then I also realized that there is something more. I cannot recognize if I objectify again something that I don't see so good, or if there is awareness, consciousness. So I'm a little bit confused about this. So the last time you talked about you cannot objectify consciousness, and also it's not the first time I heard about this. But you know, I had a doubt when I do some meditation. I see and I ask myself, yeah, I see something, but maybe I'm objectified, so it's not really consciousness. So I have some.
I think begin with this question of yours it's very, very common. It's universal because we have our sense instruments, our sense organs connect with the exterior world of objects. So extroverted, the mind and the sense instruments and organs, they are extroverted. So when we start searching and seeking to find out who we really are, so we are advised to begin objectifying the mind, the emotions, the feelings, the memories, anything that comes into the scope of your awareness. You keep watching it and identifying it, right? So you are seeing things. And as we watch these things, if this is your meditation, I don't know. So as you watch it, you automatically you establish a distinction between you, the principle, this witnessing principle, watching it, and the object of observation, of experience, right? Immediately, it's unavoidable when you start objectifying phenomena that you are making a distinction between you, the seer, and what's being seen, right? And then the question that you bring now is like, but how can I get to know consciousness if I cannot see it? And then you also say, if I understood you correct, that sometimes you see it, you see consciousness, right? You have a feeling that you see it.
Yeah, maybe I had, but it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the only way we can see it, we can see consciousness is through the eyes of wisdom. So the eyes of wisdom, not our physical eyes, or not our mind that can somehow see things, you know, subjectively. So the only way we can see consciousness is through the eyes of wisdom. So the eyes of wisdom is the eyes of knowledge, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Anta is a means of knowledge that it's equivalent to the eyes of wisdom. Okay, so we see through that, we develop that vision, and that is, you can see consciousness only by the means of knowing consciousness. Now, how can you know something which is not based on perception, and inference. If all knowledge, every knowledge we gain, we acquire, it depends on perception and inference. So you understand inference?
Yes.
Inference is based on perception to begin with. So most of all our knowledge is scientific knowledge, is inferential. Okay, we make deductions, okay, based on previous perceptions. You know? So how can we see the self and understand consciousness, or get to know consciousness, if it cannot be seen, known, and perceived by the means of perception and inference? So that is the big question, because you were saying like, no, sometimes I almost see, but it escapes my grasp, you know, it escapes. So the effort that you were doing, from my understanding, is the effort of understanding the most obvious thing. And sometimes we almost understand it, but we don't understand it because of this tendency again and again to try to reduce consciousness to an object of knowledge. Okay? The bottom line here is that sometimes we almost understand consciousness not as an object, as my own self, as the knower, as the seer, as the perceiver. I am consciousness. And therefore, I cannot see, perceive, experience, and know consciousness objectively. I cannot know it but I can know it as my own nature. I can know consciousness only as my own self. Okay? So, and that's the only way this knowledge can be gained. Okay? Not an experience, it's not an object of experience, it's not an object of knowledge, consciousness. Consciousness is this conscious subject, existence principle that infuse the mind of the meditator, so that he begins searching for himself. But he will never going to find himself as an object of knowledge, because he is the subject. He's the
subject.
He's the one seeking. So when we do our meditations in silence, the mind may become very, very subtle, very, very subtle. That's in connection to what I said last time before we closed our session. The mind may become so subtle, we call it a sattvic mind, okay? So the rajas, this extroverting, this projecting kind of power, subsides and calms down, and then the mind stops just jumping from one thought to another. It starts, you know, and then if it does not fall in sleep, but if it remains alert, because sometimes these rajas, it turns into
tamas.
And then we start falling asleep. We start dozing. No, we want to remain alert. Rajas is gone, and then that rajas, instead of being converted in tamas, it remains converted as alertness, sattva. Okay, the power that discloses, that reveals, that illumines whatsoever. So when the mind is very subtle in that manner, consciousness can be perceived experientially as an object, but not directly, because it's impossible. Okay, consciousness is that what is illumining the mind. Now, mind, due to the light of consciousness, can illumine and see what's going on in its field of experience. Okay, so when this mind is extremely subtle, the consciousness can be perceived and be felt, okay, indirectly as the reflection of consciousness on a sattvic mind. So we can develop a sattvic mind by the means of yoga, you know, of samadhi yoga, for example, deep meditation. We may develop a mind that is extremely sattvic. And extremely sattvic mind is going to produce a very pleasant experience of peace, love, silence, bliss, ecstasy, samadhi, and so on. So all those experiences, they're nothing but consciousness reflect in a purified mind, in a mind that is such a reflector. It's so subtle that somehow it reflects consciousness. The consciousness can be perceived by this sense of present existence. You know, I exist, I am. When we look into the meditation which was suggested to Nisargadatta Maharaj by his teacher, and he was somehow passing it on to everybody. His only tool was this meditation. Meditate on this sense, feeling, I am, I exist. The primordial I thought, I exist, nothing more than that. I am. So when you do that kind of meditation, it's a very, very strong purifier of the mind. If you develop a sattvic mind, you're going to start experiencing what Nisargadatta Maharaj used to call pure consciousness. That was the confusion that he has created to all of us. He called the reflection of consciousness on a very sattvic mind. He used to call pure consciousness. Okay, and then he used to call pure consciousness. He used to call the absolute, and the absolute for him was nothing but another experience called Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Okay, so he was using all these experiential word notions to explain what is enlightenment and what is the mind, which is so subtle, so pure that the experience, you know, what he was calling pure consciousness. What is pure consciousness according to Nisargadatta Maharaj? I talk with certain authority about Nisargadatta because I stayed more than 10 years as his student, and I was doing everything, and I was successful following his instructions. I was experiencing ecstasy, bliss, and beautiful states of consciousness, of human consciousness. But this pure consciousness, is nothing more than a pure mind. It's not pure consciousness. It's a pure mind that produce a nice reflection of consciousness, that it feels like pure presence, pure bliss, ecstasy, peace, love, satisfaction, and so on. Those are all, you know, effects of consciousness reflect in a very, very calm, very contemplative, very meditative mind, the mind that was brought to focus so that all rajas was suppressed, you know, and then it remains alert. And then in that kind of mind, you start feeling this huge sense of existence, presence. This is an experience of the self, but it's an indirect experience because the self, in that sense, in the experiential sense, can only be experienced in its reflection.
Yeah.
In its reflection. We can never experience the self because the mind and the reflections the mind produce, you know, are effects of consciousness in association with the subtle body, okay? With a jiva. So what is a jiva? A jiva is in its true fundamental essential nature. It is but consciousness, original consciousness. But the jiva, in its lower or secondary nature or appearing nature, it appears as the reflection of consciousness on the subtle body. We have the jiva, the entity called the jiva, a reflection of consciousness on the subtle body. No? So we have the jiva. The jiva fundamentally is consciousness. And why the jiva is consciousness? Why? Because the jiva is made of consciousness and consciousness alone. Okay? Doesn't matter if the jiva is consciousness reflect in a subtle body. What matters is that the essential nature of the jiva is the essential nature of Brahman, which is pure consciousness. Now, you can only realize that you are pure consciousness in the true sense of the word, not a pure mind, not a refined mind, a mind that reflects consciousness to, to the best of its ability. Okay? But we can only know that we are pure consciousness, not experientially, but by the means of knowledge, by understanding, okay? By understanding that I am the reflection of consciousness of the Jiva, therefore I hold the same nature as Brahman, as consciousness and consciousness alone, okay? So this knowledge, this realization of one's true nature is only possible by the means of knowledge. And this knowledge is not an experience. Why I'm elaborating a little bit more on this one? Because when I was with Nisargadatta Maharaj, for many years, I was experiencing the reflection of consciousness on my mind was sattvic, after so many years of meditation. So I was experiencing this, and I knew, wow, this is pure consciousness. It's so beautiful. It's so wonderful. It's so blissful. I was experiencing all of that in the beginning, thinking that that experience was the self. Okay? It was only later on I understand, when I got the book of Nisargadatta Maharaj Guru. There is a book from his guru that he makes a clear distinction between knowledge and experience. It was the first time that I opened my eyes, to the distinction between knowledge and experience. The guru of Nisargadatta, it was a better guru than Nisargadatta because he made it very clear. You understand? Vikekachudamani Maharaj did not. So when I read that book, only then I could understand this is not the self. And moreover, I always heard that the self is that which is always present. And these experiences are frustrating because the moment that I suspend my effort, my practice, and then I lose that sense, feeling, experience of I am, I exist, and it's so blissful because there are no vrittis, there are no mental modifications disturbing my mind, giving me the impression that I need something, I have to avoid something, concerns and worries and preoccupations. And there was nothing because the mind is just like in bliss. Huh? So we can develop a very, very subtle, reflective mind by the means of yoga, to the extent of experience, this pure reflection of consciousness. And yet we remain deluded by the notion that consciousness is the reflection in my mind. But the reflection is subject to modification and time, because the mind is not fully under the control of the yogi. Okay, it's under the control of Ishvara altogether, the gunas. So the gunas, they modify again, and then the reflection is no longer the same, and then whatsoever vasanas operate there, anticipation, worries, concern, fear, desire, they are going to disturb my mind, and that beautiful experience of the self reflect on my sattvic mind is lost. I knew all of that. So therefore, when we have a mind that is very refined, very subtle, very contemplative, very meditative, and then we start having all this beautiful, mystical, spiritual experience, we need to know that is not synonymous of enlightenment or moksha. Why? Because those experiences are bound by time. There are so many people in the spiritual world that have they know how to generate a very sattvic kind of reflector. And then they begin to experience the reflection of consciousness. They go through all this beautiful spiritual experience, and they never take full advantage of that kind of mind to extract the knowledge. Extract the knowledge is the key here, Extract the knowledge is simple. So, oh my God, Jesus consciousness reflecting my mind, and by the way, I am consciousness, and by implication, I am Brahman, because my conscious mind, in its fundamental nature, is nothing but consciousness alone. In the same way, everything is consciousness. But consciousness is called consciousness because it has this quality of being, of illumining and knowing experience, revealing things. And I am a conscious being, and my nature is consciousness. And this can be known only by knowledge. Otherwise, we remain forever hooked with this notion that consciousness is an object, but consciousness is not an object. Those objects of experience, they are subtle, spiritual objects of experience, but they are as deceiving as this cup. Any other object, a new car or anything, a new relationship. Every kind of object, it has certain attraction to us depending on our vasanas, our tendencies, our likes, And when we enter in that realm of this experience, of objects of experience, which are these inner objects projected by a scientific mind, we get hooked to those objects very easily. And we think that this is it. You understand? But this is not it. This is what we call stuck in sattva. We get stuck in sattva, same way we get stuck in a kind of rajasic lifestyle, environment, and pursuits, and so on. You understand? So this knowledge, Aham Brahmasmi, is only possible, this realization is only possible by means of knowledge and knowledge alone. And why Vedanta is the means, the most extensive, the most sophisticated, the most efficacious means, body of knowledge, okay? Because it has all the logic revealed by Ishvara, by the way, so that can be presented to the inquirer, to the seeker, about its own true nature, so that it can go into this development of a scientific mind, experience the bliss of consciousness reflecting its mind, and when one gets to this knowledge, there is nothing new for that, because I have experienced this reflection of consciousness of my mind since forever. Even when my mind is disturbed, I'm experiencing this reflection, you understand? So when we get to this understanding, which is greatly facilitated by the logic presented by consciousness, by Vedanta, by the Upanishads, then and only then we can really understand and claim our identity as pure consciousness, pure, limitless existence consciousness. You understand? Only then, by the means of knowledge, understanding, because the self, now to close this, because the self is not an object of knowledge experience. The self can never be reduced to an object of knowledge and experience through the mind and the sense organs, the intellect. It can never. Why? Because the self is the seer behind of the meditator, the inquirer, the knower, which is the light of consciousness illumining the mind of the inquirer. You understand? So the same way the eyes cannot see themselves, but they can see the entire universe. We can perceive so many things through our mind, through our eyes, but the eyes can never see themselves. Right? So have you noticed that if we have a camera, in the old days, we take photos everywhere we go, the camera make pictures all over. Some people, they are so addicted to pictures. I have some friends visiting us here in Italy recently. I think they made more than 1,000 pictures. 1 week here in Bergamo, 1,000 pictures easily. When we look into those photos that they made, the camera never shows up. Isn't it intriguing? The camera made thousands of pictures, but it never shows into the pictures. So likewise, consciousness is going to reveal everything that exists in the outer world, in the subtle inner world. Everything is revealed by consciousness. But in the revealer, it cannot reveal itself. You understand? But it does not mean that consciousness cannot be known. In fact, it must be known. And it seems to be the very goal of of human life is to come to this knowledge realization, because that's the only way we relax, when we really understand our infinite nature, you understand? So it can be known, it must be known, and but it can be known only directly and immediately. So self-knowledge is a knowledge whose nature is direct and immediate knowledge. What it means to say? It means that the knower can only know itself as a subject, never as an object. When the knower wants to know something that can be objectified, we go into the trinity of the knower, the known, and the knowing process. Okay? But when the knower is about to know its fundamental, free, essential nature, there is no question of a space or a distance between the knower and the known, because the knower is the object of knowledge in this case. You understand? Therefore, the knower can only be known directly by one to understand that, oh my God, I am the I was searching for. I am that which I have been looking for, searching. I have been going for 20, 30 years, 10 years around the world, going through all these teachings and teachers, looking for myself. I'm the one looking for, and and I have been always present. It's this simple truth that is hidden in open sight. I think there is an expression that says something like that. Huh? It's not hidden, it's available. It's all here, looking for. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that helps you. But it takes some time to understand that self-realization is only possible by understanding.
Yeah. Yes. There are a lot of elements, and yes, but there are interesting things that I understand now. So every time I perceive something, also if I perceive, also if I think to perceive consciousness is only a reflection of consciousness.
Yeah, it's a phenomenon produced by consciousness, like any other phenomenon. That's why Yanni, after it resolved this fundamental confusion, it does not go around doing much sadhana for anything, because he knows that everything is consciousness experience itself. You understand? I mean, now to understand that, we need a very scientific kind of reflection, a mind that is real. But later on, any kind of thing reflect on the mind, regardless of the composition of one's mind. We know, this is God, this is consciousness. Everything is
yes, everything.
You understand? Because that's the nature of existence. Existence, which is synonymous of consciousness, is everything that exists is it. Right? Any kind of subtle experience, because when we come into this realm of, mystical or subtle spiritual objects appears, and then we give a higher kind of value to those things. But those are not consciousness. Consciousness is the seer of that. In every one of those experiences, of those perceptions, you can discriminate you as the seer of whatsoever is happening. That's why this discrimination between subject and object is so important, because as the mind becomes subtle, the objects appear very, very subtle in our mind, and yet they have to be described as an object. Why? Because they appear to me. Their experience proves the existence of my conscious existence principle, that which reveals all these objects. Extremely subtle, extremely dense, but everything is being revealed by this conscious subject principle. That way, we keep negating reality to all of that appears in scope of my subject conscious existence.
Arlindo, I have a question, a follow-up on that. So I think I get that meditative sattvic mind reflecting awareness pretty well, but can you contrast that to the phrase that's often used called standing as awareness? And that I had thought that just meant discrimination, and I'm not sure that's true.
Yeah, this is a good question, good point. When we say standing in awareness, that requires a further explanation or illustration. So we usually say stand in awareness, because when you say stand in awareness, what's happening there? There is duality, right? There is me and awareness. So make a stand in awareness, right? And then we have to come back, because language is very limited. Language is all comes about in this dimension of time and space and experience, you know. So, and then we have to come back immediately and try to adjust our language and say, make a stand in awareness as awareness. Understand? As well. So I am awareness, but yet I keep getting myself confused with the mind, okay? Which is the medium by which I can illumine and experience and know the phenomenal world. Huh? So when I say make a stand in awareness, I'm again having indirect knowledge, duality, me and awareness. But when we say make a stand in awareness as awareness, it means to say again and again, remember there is no such a thing as awareness as something other than yourself. Make a firm assertion of your true nature as awareness again and again. That's what it means, make a stand in awareness. You see, language is really a problem when we come to Vedanta. And that is related to another question that Dave brought to us today about mysticism and so on. So when we want to really start Vedanta and benefit from Vedanta, we need to correct our language and get away from all this language that imply time, space, action, distance, experience. You understand? Language has all those implied meanings of time, space, distance, experience, transcending. So you go from here and there. You're going to merge, and you're going to make a stand. You have to make a stand, you know. Language is very, very deceiving. And we try our best with Vedanta as an attempt to again and again speak with the language of knowledge, you know. Our language is a language of identity knowledge rather than time, space, experience, actions, and so on. Identity knowledge. So how are we going to say, make a stand in awareness as awareness? We need you have to put the as awareness, you understand? Just keep it alive in your mind. My nature is consciousness and consciousness alone. This is my true identity / nature. This is making a stand in awareness. You understand?
So that discrimination is standing as awareness?
Standing in awareness, making standing awareness as awareness is a sort of a form of discrimination, in the sense that when you make a stand as awareness, you know that you are the only subject conscious principle, conscious existence principle. And anything else that appears, emerges, you know, is an object, okay? So all these objects, they are not apart from me, but I'm not the object. I'm not limited by them. I'm not affected by them. They are superimposition on my conscious existence. So I stay as consciousness, and I see the world as media, apparent objects coming, changing from moment to moment, and disappearing in time. Okay? And I am that which is beyond time, space, and so on. So making a stand as awareness. We could cut make our stands in awareness. We just go there and make a stand as awareness. I say, but as awareness, I'm already aware. I don't need to stand anywhere, right? Just be aware. Own your identity as awareness, you know, to make it even more simple. But somehow, to help people to understand, we use some language that experiential language as well. Otherwise, we don't attract people. I want to talk a little bit about that. Swami Chimayananda, I had this conversation with Ramji a few times, because when I got to know Vedanta and Ramji, I thought to myself, so Ramji is a great teacher. He has a lot of knowledge, and I have great respect towards him. You know, I'm his student. I learn from him, even nowadays, after 6-7 years. And then I thought on those days, so if he's such a great teacher, just imagine his guru. So I went and I bought all the books I could buy of Shimayananda. And then as I began reading his books, I started getting a little bit confused, because Shimaya presents Vedanta on a mystical language, okay? On a experiential action experience language, a lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time. So I went back to Ramji and I said, so, I mean, there are some contradictions here, because it's talking like this and like that. So he turned to me, I was in India when I was talking to Ramji. He said, that's why usually I don't suggest Shimaya to my students, at least not in the beginning, until they understand. And then he went on to say, and then I asked, but why Shimaya was doing that? And he said, well, he told me like that. I don't like to talk about that, he told me, Ramji. But I can tell you that Shimaya knew what he was doing. You know, if you know what you're doing. And then in another occasion, he mentioned he was doing that because he wants to have a huge impact, and I want to attract the crowd from yoga. The big crowds are on yoga. If you want to really have impact, you need to begin talking a little bit of people's language to attract them. And then later on, you can start, you know, present the things more as they are. You know? So language has this problem. If we stick to the knowledge, identity, language, the teachings, they lose almost most of its appeal to most everybody, you know? Why? Because everybody has a huge value for experience. The value for experience is great. Value for knowledge is not so great. You are mute.
I was going to say more is the pity on that one, that the knowledge is not more foremost. And I was reflecting, this is just a comment about last week's talks, and it occurred, I have a science background, and it occurred to me that all the 4 Ds are very much the qualifications of a good scientist. And the disciplines are very much the disciplines that a scientist brings to the table when they're thinking rationally about the experiential existence. And it was just very beautiful to see that knowledge for what we apply now for the most intricate and subtle of mathematical thinkings and so forth, applied back in very, you know, thousands of years ago. And knowing that that actually was what being a human being was, as its nature is more fulfilled in obviously in the samsaric world, but also applied with the Vedanta methodology to the scripture. So it was a lovely class last week. Thank you very much.
I hear you. Okay.
Arlinda, I was just thinking about this and what Lynn says, and I just think, I keep thinking, is it ignorance that that keeps us in the experiential state? And then as we become exposed, I guess, if you will, to knowledge, as we start studying the means to knowledge of Vedanta, then ignorance is being removed, and allows us then to even get a glimpse then of the of consciousness, if you will, to move away from the experiential component that we live in, and really try and move beyond it. I'm having a tough time with the language too, because it just doesn't seem to. There's like a step here that I can't articulate that goes beyond the experiential, the samadhi, the existence, and living in a very sattvic mind, a very sattvic state, and I feel unable to take it to the next. What's the next step? The move off of reflection to what? So that's what I find hard to articulate. I started thinking I can understand it, but I can't articulate it.
I think I may have understood you. I believe. I mean, you say. I mean, we have this experiential vasana. The most primordial vasana there is a vasana for experience. That's why we get reborn, because we want to come back here to start, feel, and taste, and go through the realm of experiencing the world. So we have a huge vasana for experience. So when we come to Vedanta, in the beginning, it's a little bit frustrating to know that the self-knowledge and moksha is not possible by the means of experience, but by the means of knowledge alone. And then we begin this process that you said, that start inquiring, submitting, or studying the scriptures, following its logic, so that we begin understanding better and developing this Vedanta vision, which is the vision, the scriptural vision, the vision of Ishvara. But it takes some time, because as I understood you saying, we tend to, again and again, this ignorance tends to extrovert our mind, our intellect, to believe that I'm going to solve it with a certain new experience now. Now we're talking about spiritual experience. I want some other sort of experience that is going to solve my problem of identity. Because now I understood the problem here is identity, but I want to solve it by the means of an experience. And the problem of identity can only be solved by the means of knowledge. But it sounds so simple. And it is simple, but it's not easy. And the reason it's not easy is because this ignorant tendency to want to experience, and this huge value for experience, or perception and inference, becomes a huge problem, because it's a huge vasana, a huge tendency, a huge belief, So here and there we start really understanding it, as I understood you say that, and then I have the glimpse, I have this clarity of knowledge, I have moments of certainty of knowledge in regards to my own identity, my own nature. But then again, comes a thought in my mind and say, yes, but I want to feel it. I mean, I want to experience, this yes, but again and again, want an experience that can prove what the Upanishads reveals. The statements of the Upanishads, people come to Vedanta, a lot of the time they said, yes, but I want an experience that can prove my infinite, limitless nature as consciousness. Otherwise, I don't believe it. And the person is not aware that his or her existence is already proof of its conscious existence. It's already proved. The only thing that needs to be understood is that my conscious existence is of the nature of limitlessness. I was never born. I will never die. This is the 1/3 part of this understanding that needs to be properly digest. I am of the nature of consciousness existence. I was never born, I will never die. I am beyond time and space. Time and space just comes and goes. We see my conscious existence, appears and disappears. I am limitless, I'm Ananda. So Jesus is the last piece to understand, but it's simple. Once we really take on board the fact, in our mind, we accept it, the fact that no experience will ever give us certainty of knowledge. No experience will ever give us certainty of knowledge, because experience is a projection of the mind, is subjective, and it comes and goes, and it's almost impossible to repeat the same mystical experience twice. You understand? So what are you going to do with all those experiences? How are you going to, what are you going to make out of it?
Yeah, what I want to say is that the experiences then, to the extent that they help you develop a sattvic mind, a mind that can reflect consciousness. So if the experiences are helping you create that sense of bliss, that sense of timelessness, even though it's not, but to the extent that you're developing a sattvic mind, then all these experiences are good. So if you're doing and I go to kirtan and I love it, and that helps create a sattvic mind. That's a good thing. That's helpful. And but understanding that the journey doesn't end there, and or it could go beyond that. But ignorance maybe prevents you or the jiva from knowing that there's something beyond really beyond the experience of bliss here in this current in Mithya. And
when you experience mental calmness, after doing our sadhanas or going to a session of kirtan or anything that calms our minds, we have a sattvic mind. So we're very happy, we are satisfied with ourselves. What do we do with that? You understand? What do we do with that? Because unless we use that platform and we run back to our scriptures, and we do our self-inquiry, we are wasting sattva guna. Because sattva guna is going to produce the feel-good stuff. But what is the good of the feel-good stuff, if it's bound by time? Yes.
May I comment?
Please,
I'm reflecting on, I am not the actor. I no longer identify with the experience, so it enters into that dispassion. The experience is only the result of karma that exists in the field. Ishvara is the actor, not me. I'm the seer of the action.
Totally.
Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So if you have a beautiful experience and if you follow the logic, you stay put with the logic presented by Ruth now, you are just enjoying that. But I think Jesus was produced by Ishvara. Ishvara brought about the circumstance. I went to this kirtan, when I got a massage, I did my meditation, I'm experienced bliss, But I am consciousness. I'm the witnessing conscious subject principle, and I'm free from any kind of experience. So in that way, we are doing our Jnana Yoga sadhana. We are not just enjoying the feel-good stuff, but we are discriminating the feel-good stuff as not real. You understand? And then we go into a different dimension of sadhana, which is the Vedanta sadhana. You just reject punya and papa, sattva, rajas, and tamas all together. It all belongs to Ishvara. I am this conscious subject principle. So this sattva guna produced by these events and sadhanas and efforts we put on in, they need to be put to purposeful use so that we can do our discriminate such the example of roots, We can go.
I am free.
Yes, I am free of this. This will pass. I don't get entangled with this nice, feel-good experience, This is just another object traveling through me. So let me see here the question of, so anything else on this topic? We are not going to go much away from this topic. This is an important topic, but we could wrap it together with the other question presented by Dave last time. And was talking about mysticism.
And in my mind, you've kind of covered it for me, Orlando, about mysticism.
Yeah.
And just understanding what it is it's experiential.
Yeah, that's the most
great.
important.
And it's great, and so I don't want so it tells me don't judge it, or if I judge it, look at it as a positive thing that's going to create a more to the extent that it's creating a more sattvic mind. That's really great, and endorse it and embrace it and all those kind of good things, and know that there's more work to be done.
Yeah. So a sattvic mind can produce mystical experience, esoteric experience, spiritual experience. These are a byproduct of a sattvic, subtle mind, a mind we start contemplating. And the mind has the power to project as well. It does not produce that without any rajas. Some rajas should be there to project. Most of this mystical experience, one has already an idea, oh, I heard about this, I heard about that. The mind becomes subtle, and then those very subtle notions start projecting, or vasana start projecting those visions, those sounds or audio, experience. So all of this is based on my personal subjective experience, which depends on a sattvic mind. So now again, there are so many people with sattvic minds. They either go to the scientific communities and they become inventors, discoverers, scientists, and so on, because they have sattva there and they have some rajas and they want to explore phenomenal worlds. So they are going to be good contributors, in terms of objective knowledge. Right? But if we become kind of mysticals, we want to explore those very subtle projections of the mind, which we call esotericism or mysticism, all those subjective kind of visual or audio kind of perceptions, from realms, so these very, very subtle realms. So subjective, it's experiential, and the bottom line, as you already realized, Dave, is like it's just an object. It's another field or category of object that we may get stuck with. We get entangled with. We don't want to be entangled and stuck with any kind of objects, neither the object for security, the ones for desire and pleasures and virtues and anything, So mysticism is based on personal experience, and whereas Vedanta is purely based on knowledge, because you asked me the difference between mysticism and Vedanta. So people who are interested in mysticism, usually they are experiential, they are oriented, they are experientially oriented, they like to have this experience. Ramji often says something very interesting, but what is an experience? And then he comes in and he says, an experience, subjective experience, is only as good as our interpretation of the experience. Moreover, I want to have an experience. Everybody has different experience, those subtle, mystical experience. And then at the end, what will be our interpretation of the experience also differs from one person to another, It's our vasana is a projection, our vasana is a interpreting it. So now when we come to Vedanta, we have we have a knowledge. Vedanta is a science, it's based on knowledge. And we have a knowledge that once we integrate in our mind, we assimilate, we integrate, we start developing a certain vision that is a byproduct of this knowledge. And this knowledge, we call it pure knowledge because it's not an interpretation by the means of one's vasanas. It's not a personal, individual's interpretation of phenomena. Okay? It's the knowledge that comes directly from consciousness through Lord Ishvara. So this is direct, revealed knowledge. It's the nature of knowledge called revealed knowledge. It's the knowledge that is building into the universe, the projection and keeping of the universe. And this knowledge is revealed to us as something that is already there operating in the field, the same way gravity has always been there operating, but only recently we realized that there is such a thing as a force of gravity. But those knowledge, all the Ishvara is all knowledge. And the spiritual knowledge, you know, the knowledge regarding the nature of the individual jiva is already built in the system, in the nature, in the cosmic laws of the universe. The moment that the individual jiva start inquiring those knowledge, they just come. They are revealed the same way the knowledge of gravity was revealed to the scientists. You understand? So Vedanta is pure knowledge. It's direct coming from Ishvara. It's not an interpretation, a subjective interpretation of any individual. So the people attracted by mysticism, as you said, that there are a lot of people you know attracted to mysticism, are the people who attract to experience. They are still not sure about knowledge. They have much more value for subjective experience than the knowledge, the spiritual knowledge revealed by Ishvara. The spiritual knowledge revealed by Ishvara takes some time until we really assimilate, integrate, and we clear our doubts, our suspiciousness, and then we develop that clear vision, clear understanding. An experience, a mystic experience can be happening. I mean, when I meet people, including some people I met in Carbondale, the first thing they want is to share their mystical experience. It's like, this is my spiritual resume. I had this mystical experience, you know, as if that has a great value. It just shows that somebody has already a mystical, spiritual vasana operating in one's mind. That's all. You understand? So it does not have much value. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was there in Brazil is the most fashionable kind of spiritual practice there is called ayahuasca. There are these churches of ayahuasca all over the place. Most of the people who study Vedanta with me now, they come from ayahuasca. And they have a huge value for all those visions. And then I end up experiencing it a little bit, you know. And I could see that, I mean, they are all deluded. They think that they are doing great spiritual work. If you develop this mystical experience on your own, you are doing some good, much better work than depending on some substance that you have to take to alter your mind so that you have certain visions and this and that. It's an altered state of mind, you know, that produces this mystical experience. But people in general, they get very much caught up into all of that.
Thank you. I need to sign off. So.
Okay. So does anybody have any more questions? So you want to stay a few more moments, or shall we close? Yeah. Okay. I will be next. When is our next Monday? Next Monday. Which day is today? Today is Thursday. Yeah. Monday. Monday. I'm available in the next meeting, and then I will know better about the second, which is next Thursday. Is the second. The second is the day that I arrive in India. Most probably, I won't be available. You understand? But I will know, and then you can look to see if you want to change the date and maybe doing one day afterwards or something like that. You know. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, everybody. And by the way, anyone, I mean, feel free to contact me if you have any questions, more questions that we can address in these meetings any other time. I often talk to people on WhatsApp or even here like this on Zoom. Okay?
Thank
Bon
you.
voyage.
Yeah.
Good trip.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.